Steve.
Hello.
Where is it coming from? Let's
Steve,
try
can you hear us?
I can hear you.
coming through my computer. It says it's not going to, but it is. Hi.
Good evening.
LGTV. Oh, just trying to figure out what's going on. We'll try that.
I'm John.
Steve, can you just say something for me real quick?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
That's pretty good. Thank you.
I still haven't got the little.
I know, I don't either.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Mhm.
I'm not sure I want to go back to that.
Oh, it's, yeah, I'll be right back.
I want it to pin speaker view. There. And then I'll take this down just a hair. There we go.
Steve, can you hear us?
Yes.
Now we can hear you better.
Yes, I changed it because I gave up on the TV. And I turned it down to just my computer.
Okay.
So that should work. Marianne should be here shortly. She's bringing coffee and water. There's a couple cookies, but I'm not sure what she's doing with them yet. So
Okay.
yeah, I know.
How many others do you expect here?
There's Bill is online, so that's Bill Myers.
Yep.
Then Siggy, Deb, John, Nikki.
Whoa, look at this.
Hey,
Hi. You made books for everybody?
we actually had some made up already. So there are books available. They were in the vault. So all we're asking is that people return them when their tour of duty is over.
Yeah, John, how you doing?
It was well worth the trip.
And then I got,
John Condino.
How are you?
Good.
John,
How you tell with the
We're a
mask?
town of, component of Barton and Del Judas.
Oh, okay. Okay. Hi, sweetie. Harvey's here. How you doing?
Is this,
Yeah.
did you do this?
Okay.
No, actually, Marianne worked with her assistant, Dylan Berenger, to get those all put together.
Determined.
Good grief, that's pretty cool.
Well, you know.
Well, you know.
Hey, how are you? Oh, I know. Good.
Now, do you have a copy of the code already?
No, this,
Okay,
so
so
this is a
I
copy,
do.
right?
you do. So if you can pass your copy, that blue binder. Nope, just the blue one. You get to
This is
keep the white
Deb's.
one.
This is Deb's. The blue one.
Oh, this copy is yours.
Can I keep this? This is Deb. Yeah.
Yes.
Am I allowed to keep my blue copy?
Yes, as long as you return it when your tour of duty, so to speak, has
You
ended.
haven't told those, too. No, I did. My husband did something. Oh, now you have one of these. Oh, who's on them?
We have Bill Myers. He's one of the members of the group. He's an
Hi,
alternate.
Bill.
Then Steve, is it Lefevre?
Lefevre.
Lefevre? And then us on the far left.
Okay.
So Jen,
Wow.
is this for me, the town code of Canada?
Yes.
And then what's this thing?
That is tonight's information.
Oh, geez.
Wow. If you want, if you're the facilitator, but I can go through with the 3-ring binders. I would like you to. Sorry, sorry, you guys, we got.
I know, really. I'm jealous.
That's the only reason I came.
And they're Milano cookies.
I know, right?
Yum.
Oh, honey.
And they are-
Honey.
And they are
The pumpkin spice.
I can-
Go, girl.
yummy.
Okay, there.
And chocolate.
So, you know, we're trying to get away from single-use plastics, and I went to Dunkin' Donuts to get a thing of coffee. They're
Mhm.
closed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not enough staff. So there's coffee here,
There's a lot of
and then there's
places like
creamer,
that.
and there's
Yes, there are.
Oh, dear.
water, whatever you want. But you want a special cream?
How are we done?
Crazy. Very crazy. But I'm good. I'm doing well.
Or regular?
Okay.
Thank you for
So
being
these
here
are.
Absolutely.
and getting everybody ready.
How fun is this?
Now, Cindy, I did see your email, but not till just when I got here.
It's okay. It's
So
okay.
Deb, it might be worth, if you have the link to the Google Drive, either sending it to me or disseminating it to everyone.
All right, sure.
Because I think that people have misplaced it or didn't have
Well,
it
and
originally,
I
so.
went back and I kept looking because I know it got sent somehow,
Mhm.
but I couldn't.
I just do a search for Lasho. And I'll,
In your email?
To do that.
it's just an email.
Yeah,
All right.
and then
Yeah.
once I don't think I even have access to it.
Okay.
So if you want me to, that's one
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
It doesn't
sure.
matter to me one way or
Yeah, I'd
another,
like you to.
so. What
Yeah.
was I doing?
So Bill, where are you, Bill?
Up there, far right.
I'm right here.
You want to just come in sometime and pick up a book?
Yeah, that's my thought. Can I pick them right up at the front desk?
Yeah, pick it up in the town clerk's office and either Karen or myself will get it to you.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great.
Oh, yes, please call first because our office door is locked.
Okay,
So just because of the situation right now. So just let us know when you're coming and we'll have it ready for you.
that sounds great. Thank you very much.
Great.
John can do them.
Oh, John, sorry. I got Bill on my mind. Right here.
That's even.
Nice to meet you.
Debbie.
Sorry, John.
So this is,
Not a problem.
from Mike Morgan,
Yay.
so I don't know what you want to do with that.
All right, thank you.
This is an extra
They
one.
told me there wasn't anything there,
All right.
Oh, my.
but I don't know. How are you, Betsy? So we're waiting for.
Nobody.
Is it
Nikki?
Nikki, everything.
Nikki's not.
Oh, okay.
No, everybody's here.
All right, so everybody's here. All right, so let's get started then.
Okay,
Is
just let me
Eric
just. What's that?
Is Eric Gustafson on?
No, not yet. And I was just checking the,
Is it 7:00 yet?
not quite.
Not quite.
2 minutes.
So he might be.
So we can start and then get Eric up. That's all right.
Oh, that's fine.
And I thought that Bill was going to join us too. Bill Buchanan.
Bill Buchanan, I think he is.
Yeah, I give people a couple minutes and they can finish their dinner.
Oh.
Dinner? What's that?
That's either coffee, tea, or water.
That kind of day.
So Mary Ann went to someplace and got us coffee
Wow.
That was sweet, thank you.
and
Thank you, Dr. Pepper.
got cookies and chocolate for us. So thank you, Mary Ann.
I wanted to let you guys know that we're offering a class put on by Cornell for farmers and landowners called solar leasing agreements and to help people understand the process. And we'll be offering that in, it's October 26th, I think.
Will you send it up to everybody by email?
Where's that gonna be at the corporate
It's at the
extension?
extension office, but we'll probably have to limit how many can be in the classroom. I'm guessing by then.
The class, you know,
But it-
where people vote? That
Yes, it's pretty big space. We can find people up and we can also offer it remotely, so you
And
could
you-
watch it at home if you wanted to.
There's a little blurb you're gonna send out,
I
email?
can, yeah, I didn't think about it. Forget I can do that on you guys.
I mean, who's gonna know, are you advertising this?
Yes,
In North Country Now, like, something like that?
all the usual ways, yeah.
And
Do the newsletter too.
just while we're sitting here, what are you gonna do at this workshop?
Well, I didn't bring the agenda, but basically they're teaching people about the different layers in the solar, there's all the different, the people building it, the people doing all the legal work. There's lots of different levels and who you need to work with if you're leasing your land and what you should know if you're leasing your
Should we
land.
just join us at the table?
Oh.
Mary Ann?
And if anyone would like to use the bathroom, there is one in my office. It is one of these perks of the job.
Okay.
Instead of the public one.
So that'll be, but you could watch it on Zoom or you can come in and look. I think Jason Holtmeyer's gonna come in.
You want me to move it out of your way?
Rest of it. I don't know if that could count towards any of our training.
Oh, I would think it would. I think this would count toward our training as well.
Of the 4 hours mandated.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that a little bit. It's in the binder.
All right.
About training and,
That's what made me.
Yeah.
not that anybody polices us on that, but. Oh, Bill is on?
Yep, I just admitted him. I'm trying to keep an eye on the entry. There's a waiting room just to make sure.
It's always a good idea.
Yep.
It's 7:00.
Okay.
So I think we will get started. I like to start on time and end on time. As you know, Mike Morgan resigned. And the board has appointed me for the short term to be your chair.
I don't see him here.
Can you hear me all right?
Just fine, thank you. Yes.
Or do I need to be closer? So tonight I thought we'd try to get oriented to the process and who our resources are so that we're ready to go. Because we've got a lot of solar projects coming our way starting next month. Okay. So I just want to go around the table and we'll introduce ourselves and a little bit about our background. And we'll also have you, the people that are zooming in, and introduce yourself as well. Okay. So John, do you want to start?
So I'm John Casserly, and I have lived in Canton since 1984, in St. Lawrence County since 1975. I was born and raised on Long Island, so I'm a Long Island reject, but a St. Lawrence County advocate, like big time. I've been a teacher for a long time here at Canton High School and Middle School, and a running and cross-country coach here. And I'm retired now and get involved in, political stuff. Let's put it that way.
Planning. And hopefully John's going to be the co-chair. And I'm Deborah Backus, and I am also retired from SUNY Canton. I taught nursing there, but I've been on the ZBA and the town planning board for probably about 20 years. A long time, I guess, right? About 10 years in each place. So I am taking the chair position with John, and hopefully we can try to work together and get things done.
And I'm Siggy Barr, and I came back to Canton. I was born here, and I went to Long Island, where I worked for 35 years as a teacher and coach and whatever. But I'm back here now with my husband. We had, up until this year, Red Wagon Farm, where we grew veggies and whatevers. And let's say I brought Reg here, and he took one look at it, and he said, honey, this is paradise if you can just imagine the possibilities. So I ended up on the planning board, and that's the deal.
And you've been on the planning board for
a long time. Yes, with the gray hair. Yes.
Longer than me. Yeah. John.
Speaking of gray hair.
Yeah.
I'm John Condino. I'm from Watertown, a native of Watertown. I manage BNL's Watertown office. We've been open in Watertown now since 2012, actually, and have expanded our services pretty much all over the North Country. I tell everybody we're from north of Pulaski all the way up to Plattsburgh.
Wow.
And we're happy to be here, happy to help out, and you'll meet a couple of my colleagues here.
Very good. Okay.
I'm Mary Ann Ashley, town supervisor. This is my 4th year as town supervisor. I've served as mayor for one term, village trustee, and also on the school board. I'm a retired BOCES school counselor, and Canton is my home. It has been about 38 years. I originally grew up in Oxford, so I'm a true North Country kind of person. So, yeah.
If they can see us or not, I'm Betsy Hodge. I've also lived in Canton since 1984. And I work for Cornell Cooperative Extension as the livestock educator, and I'm quite interested in the solar from the aspect of grazing and how it's going to affect farmland and farmers in our county. And I'm new to the board, but I do have gray hair. I'm also a member, I've been on the Farm Bureau board for the county for at least 20 years. So I have connections there with other farmers and their lobbying and all that sort of thing that they do.
I'm Jenny Reed. I'm the, what am I?
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, I work in the Economic Development Office here for Lee Rodriguez. I'm her assistant. I'm also the deputy town clerk part-time. And the reason I'm here, I run a business called Reed Virtual Solutions, which I'm contracted through the town to handle minutes and planning board and ZBA stuff. So that's kind of, and I am from the North Country. I born and raised in Potsdam. I live in Madrid now, but I'm very fond of Canton. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Do we want to start with you, Bill?
Yes, good evening. I'm Bill Buchan. I'm an environmental attorney. I've been practicing in this field for close to 40 years. In the past 20 years or so, I've spent a lot of time on renewable energy projects, a wide variety of everything from landfill gas to energy project development, working with developers and also communities, represented a lot of communities in power purchase agreements to acquire the energy from these types of systems, and worked with a lot of boards, both villages, towns, cities, counties. I have a long history of municipal experience. I am engaged to assist you with the legal issues that arise. And very pleased to meet everybody and look forward to working with you on this set of projects. It looks like we have our work cut out for us.
I think so. Bill Myers, do you go by Bill or William?
I go by Bill. I'm Bill Myers. I guess a neat fact about me is that my father, my wife, my daughter, and I are all SUNY Canton graduates. So we've been in the area a while. Born and raised in the Finger Lakes. I've had the opportunity to live all around the world. And I'm a tenured faculty member and the director of the business department at SUNY Canton. I've also been involved with the Village Sustainability Committee for 3 or 4 years.
Wonderful. And then Steve, are you there?
Yes, hi. My name's Steve Lefevre, and I'm a licensed professional geologist. I've been with Barton and LaJudas for 17 years. I was not raised in the North Country. I was raised in Poughkeepsie, in the Hudson Valley. But my wife is from Long Island, if that's worth it. But I really enjoy working in North Country. Right now I'm working on projects in Ogdensburg and Oswegatchie and several other municipalities up your way, and I really enjoy coming up there. So don't hesitate to have me attend a meeting in person. It's no problem at all. I guess I kind of unofficially spearhead or lead our solar review services group. And that really started with the first major or large solar project in New York, which is located in Montgomery County, in the towns of Minden and Canajoharie, right off the thruway. It's referred to as the Mohawk Solar Project. So And then B&L is also reviewing a lot of what we call community-sized solar projects, the 5 to 10 megawatt projects. So, but we have a great staff that we all work together and going through the secret review process and site plan review process. And I'm excited to be working with the town.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, are you there?
I am.
There he is. Eric, would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your relationship with planning?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
So my name is Eric Gustafson. I'm Canton's town attorney. I've been representing municipalities in the North Country since 1997, and including all aspects of planning and appearances, both with and before ZBAs across the North Country. I'm happy to help.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. So what I thought we'd do is we'd start with Mary Ann, who will go over board responsibilities and talk to us a little bit about our code book. And then Eric, if you would just speak to, exactly what kind of relationship you have with the planning board and when we can consult you, et cetera. And then we'll go right into the solar updates, if that's okay.
That sounds good.
Okay. Mary Ann?
Okay, so what we've given you is, we each have now the code book, right?
Okay.
What's that? You already have.
Said yay.
Okay, so thanks to Ginny and her efforts.
Thank you.
Yes,
Ginny.
yes, thank you. And then I thought for your convenience, we got you these 3-ring binders so that when projects come up, you could certainly use your 3-ring binder.
Thank you for this.
Yeah, you have a little bit extra in yours, Deb.
Oh, thank
There's
you.
some page dividers and some, whatever you want in there. But basically, the information is who needs training, right?
Mhm.
So, there's a minimum of 4 hours of training a year that should occur, right? And there's so much available online. So I did make a copy of, there is a planning board overview class online. I think it's 2 hours that you could sign up for. I believe, get the training out of the way as fast as possible, then you don't have to think about it. But Karen Blackburn works with me as training compliance officer duties. We got to keep track of this in case we're ever audited. If there's ever a question, with one of the projects that come here and then they question about the training of the board, will be covered.
This one you can just take when you have time.
I
as opposed
believe
to a
so.
Certain time.
I believe so. I was a little stretched for time these couple of days because of budget, but and there's a lot online that you can take. And I think if you just all kept a log, and then we can occasionally just say, okay,
That's a great idea with the
yeah,
law.
yeah.
Learning log is excellent.
And then,
So I think right down here is your link. To the
Yep,
local
all those.
government,
yeah,
to planning board overview.
Yep, I see it.
You see it?
so I think that would be a really good one to take. And then the green sheets are planning board overview. Just, I didn't print out the slides, but this pretty much outlines your responsibilities.
Oh, good. We've been out here like 3 months.
Yeah, and there's a lot. It's a big responsibility and there's a lot. And I just, instead of, printing off the slides, I just thought this would be helpful information to read. Okay,
Very good.
and then, of course, they have all these technical series as well. So what I did is I tried to pick out the
Oh, yeah.
not most important, but helpful, right? And of course, our new governor's name's on the new one, so we had to make sure that we got the updated ones, right? So conducting public meetings and public hearings, that's in here. The zoning and the comprehensive plan. And then site plan review. That's even thicker.
This is wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then questions for analysis and evaluation of existing zoning regulations. Now, I think there's probably another 10 of these online, but A, I didn't know if you wanted, how much you wanted. And B, the paper factor, not the, that's the bigger issue, but
New York State.
it
New
is.
York State.
It's through the Division of Local Government Services. So, this is a start for you. What I come to learn as town supervisor is there's a boundary there. I can't partake, I can't advise, not that I would know what I'm doing, but there's a boundary between the town supervisor and the town board and the planning board, as you know. Because never want to be accused of political influence or, that type of thing. And, in my tenure as town supervisor, I have had a couple people come to my office about projects that come here. And I have to just say, no, can't help you out. So, and some people don't like that answer, but yeah. So, that's my role, is to help facilitate, provide ancillary support. But it's really one step removed between the town board and the planning board.
Can I also just refer you to your zoning Town of Canton code book on page 901, it's chapter 9. It goes over our membership, our terms of office, our powers and our duties. It's only a one pager, 901 to 902. So as you know, the town board is the board that appoints us. And they try to stagger our membership so that there's always some longtime members that are on the board. And also that we recommend things to the town board.
On the end, honey.
On the end, it
Tell us
says
at the end.
it's chapter 9,
901.
901.
So look on the top.
Oh, yeah.
You see it now? I know they
I
don't
know,
really
they-
go consecutive
they
pages.
don't.
And I don't understand that, but it's just the way it is.
I thought about reordering them and then I thought, I bet yours is not. So I didn't want yours to be different
Yeah.
from everybody else's.
No, mine is
And what
not.
we're used to looking for.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is also online.
Yes.
I have it up on my phone now, so I
Okay.
can include the notes when we do.
And we have started the process of a full zoning code look at, right? But we put that on hold for right now, but
Yes.
yeah.
I think it would, it's my understanding that the code is going to be revised like after the election. Is that
We
correct?
put it on hold. yes.
Yeah,
Because it is a lot of work, and
It is.
we have hired Monica Ryan. She's just finishing up with the village project. And I do have to say, though, she said we're in pretty good shape.
good.
There's just some minor things and some suggestions. So, yeah.
That's
so
wonderful.
we November 2nd's coming up quick, so
It is.
we'll see what happens.
I bet you can't wait till it's over.
Uh,
Are you gonna comment, Mary Ann?
I whispered, that's an understatement.
Does anyone have questions for Mary Ann about your responsibilities or our responsibilities for the board and the communication and what we need to do?
What has happened?
Read it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll tell you after I get a chance to
Okay.
read it.
Go ahead and read it.
I'm supposed to read it.
It's a quick read.
Well, I mean.
It's only a
next
page
time
and a
I
half.
can-
So as far as Eric's role, and I'm sure he'll clarify this, is you don't need anybody's permission to call him. You don't need to,
That's nice.
It's just if you need something as a board, you can contact him. You don't need to let me know. Isn't that the truth, Eric?
Yeah, and frankly, I'd encourage that, especially early on when there's questions and you're unsure about things. The sooner you can get me involved to, just kind of point you in the right direction, I think the easier it is for everybody in the long term. And I'm always happy to help with that.
How do we reach you?
How do we reach? Yes, exactly.
Well, I got him on speed dial.
Can you send your your email and your phone number and stuff to John Casserly and I?
Yep, absolutely.
That'd be wonderful. So Eric, what exactly do you consult on for the planning board?
Well, you're going to have 1,000 questions about the interpretation of the law, what the local law requires, what should be in the site plan review. Do we need to go through the state environmental quality review process? You'll have 100 questions about it. And those are the types of things when the code enforcement officer and you can't come up with an answer that's right plain. Those are the types of things you're going to want to call on.
Very good. I can already think of questions that are probably be coming up before we know it, right? With this.
Yeah. I mean, you'll have questions about, hey, what do we got to do to comply with the open meetings law? What do we do in executive session? Right? Those are the types of things, if you run into questions or concerns about, or somebody's asking you about, you can always pick up the phone and call me or shoot me a quick email and we can get you an answer.
Wonderful. Right.
Excuse me, Debbie, if I may, too, we're in the process of doing a search for a full-time code enforcement officer.
Yeah.
Miranda Corbine is working up to 10 hours a week right now, just on the building permits. And Rusty Lawrence, we've also contracted with him last time as interim.
Yeah.
He is doing the other stuff. But again, he has a full-time job, so, applications are due on the 27th, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we have somebody on board soon.
So for planning board purposes, I'm thinking of next month when the Mead Road project comes our way, would Rusty be the liaison between us and the county planning?
I'm not sure. My hope is to have somebody on board before that.
Okay.
Hopefully an experienced certified person. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And Mary Ann, if there's a large project coming in that's of concern, right? You can always reach out to me, and we've got Bill and Steve on board. The amount of experience and the wealth of knowledge contained in those guys is unbelievable, truly, right? So when something like that comes in and there's a large question that you just don't even know where to start, a call to me and to Bill and get Steve involved will help the project along and make sure the things that need to get done get done.
I feel like I have the resources we need for solar with everyone that's here.
Yeah.
It's the other projects that we'll probably need help with there.
Yeah, and like I said, as they come in, you just let me know and we'll help you work through them.
We have, I think, 1 or 2 subdivisions of some sort
Coming our way.
down the pipe. I'm just not sure if they're coming your way or not.
Okay.
So, but we're doing the best we can and what we are faced with. And as y'all know, code enforcement's not an easy job.
No.
Just to add, if I could, excuse me. Our firm can also, if need be, help you out with larger projects. We do a lot of site plan review. So not just solar. Steve is our lead on that, but we've got other folks. They can also help with questions and review. And we worked with Eric on a number of seeker issues, especially up there in St. Lawrence County. So yeah, we could offer more resources also.
Very good, thank you. Does anyone have questions for Eric?
Eric, you don't attend the planning board meetings. I don't think so, correct?
Yeah, not usually.
Right.
If something specific comes up and you need me there, I can make myself available, but I don't like to, just show up on a whim and, just kind of watch the proceedings. It doesn't seem like that's effective for any real purpose.
Yep, okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here and helping us when we need it. I'm looking forward to working with you, Eric.
I'm looking forward to working with all of you as well.
Yeah. Okay, we ready to move on? All right, I have St. Lawrence County, before we get into solar, I just want to give you St. Lawrence County Planning Board newsletter. On it, it has the dates, when we have to refer projects to St. Lawrence County Planning, what the referral timeline is, and what we need to, if we decide to override the county's decision, what we need for a quorum. You know, the last time we had the battery, the solar battery system, we did the policy and we overrid the county's recommendations, and then goes over that. And it also has an ag data statement on here. So this must come out once a year.
Let me
This
get
is
my hole puncher.
2021.
Oh, that'd be great.
All right.
Yes.
And Bill, I'll put yours in your book. So you can look that over. John and I met with
Jason,
Jason yesterday, right? And we talked about, you know, doing the seeker and when we refer things and what kinds of issues we refer. And he sent me an email that I haven't looked at yet with links as to what is 500 feet of a municipal boundary, the
Right.
state or highway. I've got a map, right? Did you already look at it? Did you open it yet?
I didn't see it.
I think he just sent it to us this afternoon. Okay, so that's St. Lawrence County planning.
I want to hold this down.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you mine.
This is the teacher in me, huh?
Yeah, I see that.
This is the fun part of the day.
All right.
This is interesting.
I know. I got it from.
Got it.
Oh, yes.
I want to get right into zoning update with B&L and Bill. And y'all know how to get to your Google Drive where all these documents are?
No, that's what I said. I know.
Do you know?
Pretty much.
Bill Myers, do you know how to get in to the Google Drive?
I almost brought my computer in.
No, I do not.
All right. So Bob Washoe emailed us the link, but I'll email it to you as well, or I have to email it to you too, Jenny, right?
Yep.
And then you'll have it. And Bob Washoe has agreed to continue to update it as we go along. Anything new that comes in will be on that server. What would be really nice is to take that link and put it on some kind of Canton
Some
site.
home place.
Yeah, instead of it residing in our emails that get
See,
buried.
that's why I contacted you today, hoping that was.
It existed somewhere.
Yeah, that I could just go,
Just search Bob Wash.
yeah, and link.
You do,
Best way to find it.
yeah.
We would need an intranet for that. An internal set of web pages that are only accessible to certain individuals depending on their status or
Right.
situation. And we've talked about it. I think it's in discussions with the Communications and Technology Committee, but hasn't moved forward yet.
Okay. So what you're saying is right now it has to reside on our email.
For now.
Well, it resides in Google Drive.
Right, but we can
So
only
you
access
don't
it through our
outside.
email because there's no internet.
Right, for those of us
If-
that have a Google
If
account.
If you have a
it's in our-
Google
Yeah,
account,
it's up on the right-hand side of my computer.
Click shared accounts.
Yeah.
Or shared files. If you don't have a Google account, I don't know.
Okay. I don't know that.
If you use
I know.
Chrome, then you probably have a Google account and don't know it.
I have,
Yeah.
I'm just a kindergarten. fake
Bring your
person on a
computer, maybe
computer.
next time, bring your computer.
Oh, thank you. All right, so,
Well, before you go, everything, I think, pertaining to all the solar projects is on Google Drive.
It
Every
is.
There's a lot
single
of stuff
thing.
there. It's not
Everything is
necessarily easy
there.
to read online, but you can print it and you can.
Yep.
With some of it off.
what would be really nice is to have it dated. You know, when each file comes up, put the date in there so we know what's new and what's not, and maybe a little title as to what it is.
A lot of them
I can work on that.
have dates
That would
on
be
them.
great.
I didn't notice that because I was looking through them. It's like there'll be a letter with a date and then the stuff that follows it.
There will also be a date of when it was last uploaded and when it was last edited. So I can change the titles of the files if I have permission to do so, to the date and then the name of the
That
file.
would be nice.
So who do you need permission from?
Bob, because he created the file. So I can talk to him.
Thank you for that. Okay, John and Steve. And Bill, you're on for solar. I don't know how you want to start.
Well, so I guess maybe I'll just start maybe with just a little update on where I see these 3 solar projects that are in front of the planning board right now. You have the Mead Road solar project, which started actually, I think at the end of last year, but became stalled because they had some access problems
I think they still do.
with
Yeah, I think it's fine.
well, and I'm not, that's part of the question. We're not quite sure how that's been resolved or if it's been resolved completely. We had written a review letter, which we sent to the board quite a while ago and sent to them. Yes.
This one, dated
And-
June 10th.
There were a couple of important issues with the letter. One is we had some revisions that we suggested for the seeker part 1, which is actually what you need to start the seeker process. But we never heard back from them. I think it was through Eric, that there were some issues that they were having with the access to the site. They were trying to work those out, so that kind of went on the back burner until last month. Apparently they sent a drawing that indicated that they had some other access. And Eric, I don't know if you know more about this issue that they're potentially trying to resolve maybe.
Yeah, I really don't know a ton. I got some correspondence from their attorney. I forwarded on to Bob, who I think it was going to Bill.
Yep.
Bill, I don't know, have you waded into that at all?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've taken a look at it, and they're essentially trying to get an easement from a historical property owner. And until they establish site access, they can't start their NYSERDA process. They have to have site control to begin their funding cycle. So until they're able to secure those rights, which I believe currently rest with Cornell University, according to their letter, they will need to apply for and get an easement to access their leased property.
So that issue is not officially resolved yet, correct, Bill?
We have not seen any
Right.
any final document, just what they propose to do.
All right, so I guess that one is, we're still waiting for that to be resolved and to hear what their response may be. And just to back up a little bit, and I think Steve, let him chime in on this too, the way we like to operate with these reviews and solar reviews especially is when you get the application in, you send it to us, you give us the okay to go ahead, essentially once you get their check. To pay for the professional services, we'll do the review, and we'll do a draft, and we'll send it to you, and you can distribute it to the board. with The expectation that you'll all look at it and review and get back to us with either it looks good, okay, or we've got questions, answer it before we send that on to the developers, back to the developers.
The draft is what? Can you explain the draft?
What's that?
What is it? What is in the draft?
So we'll do the review letter,
The review.
but we'll leave it in draft form.
Okay.
For your review and comment and input. And once you give us the okay, we'll finalize it. And then we'll forward it to the developer with the expectation that they will then, which typically they'll get back to the board with their responses.
Has this been forwarded to the developer?
That has.
Very good. When was it forwarded?
And the situation that we get into, and I guess I'd like to have a
Go ahead, Steve.
your understanding from the planning board on this is the applicant required to submit his documents to the planning board X number of days before a planning board meeting, I guess would be the first, question. Okay. And then, B&L needs a certain amount of time to review it, and then we need to get a draft to the planning board and to your attorney if you desire. And what happens is the solar developers are always in a hurry, right? And they don't want to miss a meeting because either they took too long to get documents to you, or we took too long to review them. So I think it's helpful if we establish some parameters at the very beginning of a solar project review as to, how many days do they have to get their information into the planning board? How much time is going to B&L going to be allowed to have to review the information and get it back to you, et cetera?
So what kind of lead time do you need?
John, what do you think? I mean, we usually take 10 days, maybe,
I was gonna say 10 days to 2 weeks is usually been adequate.
yeah. The first review takes us the longest,
Right.
because that's when we're doing but then the subsequent reviews don't take as long.
And excuse me, that it's not uncommon for these to go back and forth multiple times.
All right.
Because a lot of times what the developer what their response is may not be acceptable, we think, to the board. So it's not uncommon for them to go back and forth a couple of times.
So let me give you an update. So I've only been appointed to this position less than a week, what you say? And Bob Washoe forwarded an email from Genevieve, who's part of the Mead Road Solar Developers.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
And they wanted us to review their project tonight.
Mhm.
And I think this was in August. I want to say it was like an August letter that Genevieve sent to Mike Morgan. So I responded and said, we're happy to look at your proposal again, given that all the recommendations by B&L are implemented into your proposal. And we would like that draft by October, the end of the first week in October.
Okay.
So if we get it from them within that time frame, that'll give you a couple of weeks before the board meets. Hopefully we can meet on the 19th, which would be the third Tuesday of the month. So that's kind of where I
Good.
think we're at with this project.
Okay. We haven't started the secret process yet.
Right. They're doing part 1 and part 2 of this, right?
They submitted it, but we asked for some revisions
Yes.
and we haven't seen those yet.
Mhm.
So that would be part of it. We'll
Yeah.
have to go through that process.
Will you be doing part 1 and part 2?
They'll do part 1 and part 2. We'll review it,
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
To make sure it's complete,
Yes.
just like we review the rest of their application. And our expectation is they will then send us a revised copy.
Okay.
So that you can start the secret
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, part of the process, and I don't mean to get off tangent, I don't think I will, but most solar projects are considered a type 1 action because they're
Yes.
disturbing more than 10 acres of land or disturbing more than 2.5 acres of land in an ag district.
Mhm.
So therefore you need to do a coordinated review, which means once you have in my opinion, the part 1 form needs to be completely filled out and accurate. Okay, and you need to have the supporting documentation that if they say there's no wetlands on the property, threatened endangered species or et cetera, that you have the supporting documentation to prove that. And you need to distribute that. And then, before you go through the part 2 form, and the way I've done it is that I actually or John would maybe actually go over part 2 with you in person at a meeting. Because the planning board as a lead agency, it's your responsibility to fill out the part 2 form. And some of the questions on the part 2 form can be rather subjective. Okay, so it's really important that the planning board consider and think about your answers to those questions. The other thing is that you're supposed to take public input and comment into account before you make your decision regarding a pause deck or a nave deck. And in some cases, some municipalities like to have a public hearing, part of the secret process, especially if it's a controversial project. So by doing all these things, you can definitely drag a project out. It can take 3, maybe 4 planning board meetings before you actually complete the process. So that's how I've handled it in the past. And I just wanted to let you know that however you want to handle it is fine. But I think, Eric would agree and Bill that it's imperative that you do the secret process in a thorough and complete manner so that you protect yourselves in case somebody ever decided to sue the town because they didn't like the project. So.
I agree.
In between Steve and I and our environmental group and Bill Buchanan and Eric, will help you through that secret process.
Very good, thank you.
Procedurally, there's a procedure to follow. The first thing you'll do, we'll have a resolution, you will declare your intention to seek lead agency. And that's when we'll do the coordinated review. We will also review, when we review that part 1, to make sure that they've identified all of the involved and interested agencies again. So that when the coordinated review is done, it's done to all the agencies that it needs to be done to.
Right.
Okay. And then we'll help you through the rest of the secret project with resolutions to declare lead agency, and then review the parts 2 and 3. But we'll help you through those steps.
Good to know. Now, remember a month or 2 months ago, I gave you the seeker overview with a link. So we all should be up to date on as much as we can be on seeker.
Good.
Because it's ours to do. Yeah, I thought they did part 2 and we only had to do part 3.
They could do part 2 for you, but by no means should you. I almost think it's better to do part 2 with a blank form.
Okay.
And for the board to consider each of the items and to have discussion. I know. So let's take an example. Visual impacts. Visual impacts can be quite subjective, right? The solar developer is going to tell you that their project is not going to cause any visual impacts, right? But the residents who are going to be living adjacent to the solar facility are going to feel different, and maybe the planning board feels different. So you need to decide whether the visual impacts are a small impact or a moderate to large impact. And that's just one example. There's other impacts to agricultural lands. There's a lot of different things that I think you really need to think about and consider. And the SECRA has on the DEC website, there's actually modules that you can download. And I sometimes bring them to meetings that can help you to determine what's a moderate to large impact versus a small impact. And it has a series of questions that it helps you to evaluate these answers. So I think part 2 is pretty critical, in my opinion. The solar developer is going to obviously want you to, kind of breeze through it. But I think it's important that, go through it carefully.
Okay, thank you.
So, Steve, you seem to be telling us in your own way that we should take our time. I mean, not drag our feet, but take our time and be thorough through this and not be rushed by the developer.
Oh, definitely. And a lot of them want to rush you. So yeah, definitely.
And I think Bill certainly will chime in on this. I think the point to remember is, there's, 62 days supposedly from the application to determination. That's 62 days in my mind anyway, starts when the application is complete.
Yeah.
And our recommendation is that application isn't complete until they've complied with all of the issues in the review process, which means all the studies, the wetland delineation, the visual analysis, the noise, et cetera, et cetera. Once the board can feel comfortable that all that's been submitted, that's a complete application. And that's going to take some time. Because there are some environmental studies, the DEC may subject the developers to that. Frankly, we've got one down outside of Watertown. We're talking about grassland bird studies that will take over the winter and into next spring.
Wow.
developer wasn't particularly happy about
I
that.
bet
that
not.
DC required. Yes. So again, I think you have to keep that in mind because these solar developers that Steve knows, because he's done a lot of these, I'm getting a little experience under my belt. They want to push.
Of course.
So when you say the application is done and the 62-day clock starts, is there anything left to the application? Is it done? Is
No,
it
it's not
done?
done.
I mean, what does done mean?
It means it's complete, I think.
Complete, yes.
Complete.
And the other thing, and I guess I'd like to know what Eric and Bill's opinion is of this, but I don't think you can deem a site application to be complete until you've completed the secret process. Is that true? Because otherwise you're kind of presupposing that the project is going to get a neg deck if you were to deem the application to be complete.
You need to.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
You need to complete the seeker. Seeker is the battleground
Right.
for these projects. So seeker, you have to be very careful about the procedure to make sure you follow all the procedural steps. Because if ever there is going to be a fight over a project in the courtroom, it will be focused on seeker and whether or not the requirements of seeker are complied with. So we pay very close attention to all those steps. And, the suggestions you're hearing from the folks that have been through it time and time again is it's more important to be careful about the procedure, almost more important about the procedure than it is about the substance.
So the initial part 1 is on the Google Drive. It's called the Full Environmental Assessment Form, FEAF. And then there's a bunch of recommendations from BNL that needs to be included in there, part 1. And that we haven't heard anything.
Nothing yet.
We'll see if we get it first week of October, next week. I guess.
And that's always, that's a good heads up because that will help Steve and I and the rest of the staff that help support us sort of plan for it.
So do you just want to go over what's missing from it? Just kind of review this. Is that all?
Well, and maybe it's a
Not all
good,
we're waiting for is part 1 of the secret, right? There's other things that are missing from.
well, so that's the second, so there's actually 2 letters, which by the way, in the future, you'll see they'll be combined, both the environmental and the application
This is
review.
all environmental then. these
So the
8
one
pages.
letter is for the seeker review.
Okay,
I'm not sure what copy, and you may have the whole thing. Trying to
it's 8
determine.
pages.
All right, the 8 pages is, yeah, so this is that's the actual review, the
Of all
site
of
plan
it.
review. I think what you don't have is the environmental, because for the Mead Road project, I don't know what we did it when we first did it. Back in March, we actually wrote 2 letters, 2 review letters. One was for seeker and one was for the actual site plan. Because we were trying to get the seeker review out of the way so we could expedite the seeker process, which obviously didn't happen because the project got put on hold.
Right.
So that, just as an example, we pointed out here the interested and involved agencies, NYSERDA, Department of Ag and Markets, Department of Environmental Conservation, SHPO, Historic Preservation, Corps of Engineers, St. Lawrence County Soil and Water Conservation District, St. Lawrence County Farm Bureau, Town of Canton Fire Department. They're all agencies that are involved or interested. And then on the part 1, there were, if you read down through this, there were a number of questions that frankly weren't articulated well on the part 1, or our folks had questions on. Just trying to see as an example. Government approvals, funding and sponsorship. Item B, the table should be updated to identify the U.S. Corps of Engineers as a federal agency that must be reviewed and approve the project. i.e. impacts on wetlands, pending nationwide permit. New York State DEC, Department of Ag and Markets, and NYSERDA should be added as state agencies who are approving or funding the project. In addition, projected application dates should be added for each agency. And again, as it goes down, you'll see in our reviews that we'll go down each item and be very specific about what we feel is missing or deficient, as far as information. It's a pretty normal procedure that we'll get a corrected one back, an edited one back, with pretty much all, we'll make sure that all the corrections and additions have been made. And then again, make sure that the board understands that. And most of these items on the part one are they're pretty straightforward. But we just want to make sure, again, for the seeker review, that it is done comprehensively and very detailed. You're the ones making the decision on this. You're the ones that need to be protected. And from a developer's standpoint, I doubt very much you'll ever see that they'll push back on that process because they understand that, and their attorneys understand that. That's the seeker process, and then the actual review of the application, the site plan application. I mean, you'll see this one is 8 pages long.
Yeah.
And you'll see it's very detailed. And again, that's why we really would encourage you all to, when we send them out, to look through them and reach out to us. Anything you don't understand, reach out to Bill and or Eric and Steve. Anything that you have questions on at all, that's what we're really looking for. And then we'll look to you again to give us a heads up or forward the comments to us so that we can then finalize our review of it and get it off to the developer with your permission.
And then what we'll do, some planning boards will like us to actually review the comment letter at their meeting. So it becomes part of the, part of the public record. And then if you have residents that, that way they can be informed of what concerns we, identified.
Yes, good point, Steve. And so when it goes back to the developer and we get the responses, then as Steve said, we'll review everything for the record at the planning board meeting. Both the review and their responses.
And the developer, if they're a good developer, they're going to know that you have a solar law and they're going to have reviewed it and they're going to understand what the requirements are, but you can't always assume that. They sometimes they have to be told that, the town has this provision in the solar law you need to abide by, and they'll act like very surprised. But so.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will.
Yeah, and I would just add that the legal standard is that you need to take a hard look at the project. So that's how the courts have described it. It's a hard look at the project and make your decision, good, bad, or otherwise, but hard look before you take your vote. So that's what these forms are designed to do, is to give you as much information as possible for an informed decision. That's what seeker is all about, is to make sure that those folks that vote on decisions are fully informed as to the total scope of the impacts of the project. So as you're reviewing these things, if there are questions that occur to you, issues that you don't feel have been adequately addressed, that's the time to raise them in the seeker review to make sure that everything is in the record and that hard look is in evidence when the matter gets contested in a court of law.
So it sounds like for the board's first action on this solar project is that we get right into the seeker.
Yes.
Do that first.
That will be.
And that will really determine whether or not we can go forward or if it's done right there.
That is the first step. It is the first step. And I don't know if you have, so just to give you an example, like of the review and the detail that Steve and his team go through on these application reviews, for instance, on the Need Road project, for instance, Steve mentioned, the visual impact. And the reply here was, perform a visual impact assessment of the proposed solar facility in accordance with New York State DEC guidance document, the EP 002, titled Assessing and Mitigation Visual and Aesthetic Impacts. In conjunction with the preparation of a view shed analysis map, prepare photo simulations to depict proposed solar arrays, etc. The photos simulation should display the view of current site conditions, the view of the solar panels in place, and the view of vegetation screening in place. Solar panels will be visible from sensitive receptor locations. At a minimum, the sensitive sensor receptor locations from which photo simulations must be prepared must include neighboring properties and Mead Road, including line of sight profiles, elevation views for each of the photo simulation locations. Now, in contrast to that, under glare analysis, solar collectors and other facilities shall be designed and located in order to minimize reflective glare and or glint toward any inhabited buildings on adjacent properties and roads. There are no major roads or highway / roadways within the immediate proximity of the project that would be impacted by glare. Therefore, B&L does not feel that a glare analysis is necessary given the remote location of the proposed solar facility.
We spoke a little bit about glare at one of our meetings. When we
Okay.
talked about this project. I recall that.
And again, that's why it's important for you as a board to understand what our recommendations are. Because again, it's your decision. If you were to say to us, no, we really feel, even though it's remote, there is a residence nearby that a glare analysis should be done. That's what we want to know. And that's what we want to hear. So that we can adjust that. Again, we go through noise analysis. A noise analysis must be conducted, and we cite the DC program policy, site plans.
So it's not okay for them just to say there isn't going to be much noise from the solar array, because that's what they said at that
Right,
meeting,
yes.
right? Because we
Yeah,
talked-
so we don't necessarily require that they have to go out and do a physical noise study, but if they have the specification sheets for the inverters, which is generally what's going to produce the noise, they can take that information, and if they have people that are qualified, they can model what the noise is going to be at the nearest property line. And then if the town has a noise code, we can, compare it to that. If not, we have kind of standards that, if it's under, say, 55 decibels at the property line, that's generally acceptable. And the inverters only make noise during the day, right, when the sun's out. So, but yeah, we require them to provide documentation. They can't just say that, don't worry, it's not going to produce any noise. Some other towns are also concerned about potential construction-related noise impacts. So if they're going to be driving the support posts into the ground, are they going to be using like a pile driving machine? And if so, what kind of noise is that going to make? And obviously it's a temporary impact, but the planning board might want to know what those, what that noise level is going to be. So noise can be fairly important.
Yeah.
So again, and you'll see as we go through, for instance, the elements that should be addressed in accordance with requirements of New York State DEC guidance dated 2/21/20. 1, provide a detail and or dimensions on the plans depicting the panel spacing. The individual rows of panels should be generally spaced such the vegetative area receiving runoff is equal to or greater than in length in the disconnected surface. Example, the width of the row of solar array. Add erosion and sediment control locations, etc. All stormwater management practices, locations, and details must be identified and provided in the plans. Following general comment should be addressed on the site plans in accordance with local zoning and best management practices for solar facilities. Clearly indicate limits of site plan, of clearing on the site plan. There appears to be discrepancies, particularly in the areas of proposed tree planting, screening, and proposed fencing along the northeastern corner of the site. Depict the location and extent of prime soils that drain, soils of statewide importance, and indicate whether the parcel is receiving an agricultural valuation. The three clearly indicate how the panels are to be mounted. For example, site plan should include a cross-section of any subsurface foundations, this is kind of what Steve was alluding to, that will be used for the solar array. In the event the solar array utilizes at-grade ballast footers, the underlayment should include a bed of crushed stone atop monofilament woven geotextile fabric so that the stone can be readily removed from the site and the facility is decommissioned.
So John, we expect this to be documented, not just verbal.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, because we've addressed some of these issues with them and it was verbal.
Right.
But I didn't see anything.
I was at a recent planning board meeting when, unfortunately, the engineers for the developer said, well, we don't think there's any need to do wetland delineations because it's just a field that grows, hay. And they actually, and there was a couple of other visual analysis. Well, we don't feel that should be done. And they had the gall to ask the planning board chair, do we really have to do all these things? I have to be at the meeting. And the planning board chair looked at him and then pointed to me and said, you see that man over there? He represents Barton LaJudas. They are our engineers. What they say needs to be done will be done. Do I make myself clear? Do we need to go any further?
Very good. Very good.
But yes, that's exactly what you'll get is you'll get pushback on a lot of these. And again, I think you'll see that Steve and his staff are very thorough. There's very little that they miss. And the expectation is that every one of these things will be complied with.
Yeah. That would be my expectation.
And where it gets a little more of a gray area is when you require them to come up with a decommissioning cost estimate, and they feel that, well, NYSERDA has a model and it's so much per milliwatt, megawatt to decommission, and we say no, you need to do an itemized cost estimate to come up with a decommissioning cost, and so that's usually a power struggle sometimes with some of these developers. I guess the other thing other towns have required the solar developer as part of a condition of site plan approval that they put money into an escrow account that then can be utilized by B&L to do periodic site inspections during the construction of the solar facility for, say, stormwater erosion protection controls to make sure they're in place, and also to inspect, say, the access road, and then also to inspect the if landscape screening is going to be required for visual impact mitigation purposes to do that. So we've had several towns hire us to do that, provide that service, so that it's not what they say they're going to do, but it's what the plans specify they have to do, and then B&L will ensure that they do what's on the plans. So that's just something for you to consider.
Do you work with the code enforcement officer of that particular town?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Yeah. Actually, none of the ones that we've been involved with have actually started construction yet, but that's obviously going to be our intent. Yes.
So you said something about gravel and I think fabric. Did you mention fabric underneath the gravel? So it should be, how does that get documented? How do you document that? You take pictures?
What you mean as far as?
Bring it to the planning board and bring it to us and saying this has been all done, and all this gravel has been done and whatever.
You mean when it's constructed?
Yes.
Well, you bring up a good point. Actually, I'll let Steve weigh in this also. I think we've had instances where, just like any other construction project that the town may undertake, an infrastructure project, you hire someone to inspect it during the construction so that they can certify it's being constructed according to the plans and specs. For a project like that, it doesn't necessarily have to be full-time inspection. Say if you were putting in a water line or something of that nature, but you may want to consider getting the provisions so that the developer understands that there will be an expense for you to pay, say, B&L, to provide inspection oversight during construction. So that it can be confirmed that it is built according to plans and specs.
And so B&L can do that, the code enforcement officer do that, or a combo of both?
A combo of both, sure.
And the other thing, what we'll do is, as a condition of site plan approval, is that once the construction is completed, the solar developer has to provide the town with what's called, as-built drawings, if you're familiar with that term. In other words, a PE, a professional engineer, is going to have to sign off and say that this project was constructed in accordance with the approved set of plans. And so that if something ever did happen, that professional engineer is taking on liability by, saying that the project was constructed in accordance with those plans. So I think they're going to take that responsibility pretty seriously.
That's you, right?
Well, that's us, but we're not going to provide as-built drawings. The solar developer is still going to have to provide, as-built drawings. We're going to basically be the town's eyes, if you will, out there.
What did you call that gizmo, that report?
As built.
As-built drawings.
As-built.
Typically at the end of any, especially municipal construction project, you're required to supply as-built drawings that show exactly how the project was constructed. It was constructed according to plans, and that's signed off by a PE professional.
Or if there were any deviations that were approved by the town or B&L on behalf of the town, that they would be recorded on those as-built drawings.
Would those as-built drawings be something that would have to be retained for the purposes of guidance during decommissioning?
Sure. That's a good point. I mean,
Yes.
I think you could keep electronic copies, but yeah.
So as you see through the review, we also review and require that any project that size is going to need a stormwater pollution prevention plan. There's always comments on those. There's always issues that they miss or don't address. It will include an operation and maintenance plan that's reviewed. Very importantly is the decommissioning plan and the decommissioning bond that's required. And how that decommissioning bond needs to be reviewed periodically throughout the life of the project, because costs change, we all know. So that there are provisions where the board can review that bond limit, say at 5-year intervals, to see if there's adjustments that's needed. And then there's generally some additional information, anticipated permits, coordination, pilot agreement, if applicable.
Do y'all know what pilot stands for?
Payment in lieu of taxes.
Payment in lieu of taxes.
And that's something that Bill or Eric would get involved with. Lots of times the solar developer will approach the county IDA, and they want to negotiate the pilot agreement with the IDA and then the school district. And Eric or Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but the town always isn't involved in the pilot negotiations. The towns get the least amount of money out of a pilot. But what I noticed you have in your law, which is quite good, is that you say the town of Canton has established that there shall be a community benefit to maximize the benefits of a solar project to the town of Canton and its residents. The benefit shall be determined via an agreement negotiated between the town and the developer/owner. So that's where you can, it's basically a host community benefit agreement, if you want it. And it can take a lot of different forms. It could be so much money per megawatt that money is just given to the town and the town can use as it may. Or it could be the developer would maybe help to fix up a park or do an improvement in the town, but but that's an important provision that you have there. Because the pilot agreements, especially for the smaller solar projects, it's been my experience that by the time it trickles down to the town, you're not going to get a whole lot.
Now, I believe that the pilot agreement isn't part of the planning board's responsibility, but rather the town board.
Town board.
Yeah, it's a town board yeah,
I don't really want to be involved in dollars and cents.
That becomes between the attorneys and the town,
Very good.
and the town board, you're right. Exactly.
And then there's a whole nother discussion we could have, but the town has the option to opt out of the pilot. So where if you, in other words, if you don't, you could say you want to do full taxation of the solar project, which solar developers don't want you to do. They want you to enter into a pilot, because a pilot is going to result in the town getting slightly less money than if the project were assessed at full value.
Yeah, let me just make one more comment, just a general comment for your consideration. Whenever one of these projects come in to the town, there's a clock that begins to run on whether or not you can require a pilot. So it's very important when anybody on the planning board or the code office receives an inquiry, we need to immediately send out a letter demanding that there be a pilot agreement. So just as a point of practice, whenever there's something new that's brewing, and even if it's just mentioned by staff, bring it to our attention, because I've already put together a letter for the Route 11 project that can be a template. We just need to make sure we send that out in a timely way to put them on notice, because if we fail to do that, if we fail to recognize that they've started this clock ticking, we can be behind the 8 ball when it comes to those negotiations down the road.
So we talked with Jason Fotenhauer yesterday. He's the county planner, and he went through the pilot with Deb and I, and he was pretty much advocating that it be done. I'm pretty sure I'm right here, Deb. Done by the IDA, because the IDA has the expertise and they've done these things before. And they include the school district and the town and other interested parties, and this negotiated as one big bundle. But that leaves that to community benefit if I'm misunderstanding or understanding this. How do you look at that?
It's two separate things.
Yeah, two separate things.
Okay, good. So the IDA negotiates the pilot, but the town negotiates the community benefit.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not us. Okay. And I guess the county planning board is going to work with the IDA, and they're going to do some kind of continuing education for the boards on the pilot project. If you're interested in that, it's going to be coming. John, I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed is an understatement.
Well,
But go on.
trust me, we hear that a lot, especially when it comes like to the solar projects.
Mhm.
They are as simple as they seem. They are very complex.
Very complex.
But rest assured, with Bill and Steve and the rest of the team, and Eric, I think you're in good hands. And we'll step the board all through these. Do our best to make sure that
Yeah.
in the end, what's best for the community has happened.
And because they take time, and depending upon the quality of the submission from the solar developer, it's possible that the board may have to ask the solar developer to supplement or add to their original escrow amount. So, B&L keeps track of obviously our invoices, how much we spent, and then if you have attorney fees. So it's not uncommon to say to the solar developer, you know what? You need to deposit another $10,000 to the town. And, you know, depending upon their reaction to that, and how long that takes, that could potentially slow down the review of the project.
I will
You know,
say,
You know,
Steve, for the town of Canton, I have to commend them. Their fee, their application fee is 1% of the estimated
that's
cost.
right. Oh, that's right, okay.
God bless you. When I first saw that earlier this year, I thought, that's wonderful. And I know there was some question in talking with Bob Washoe early on with the Mead Road one. Well, we haven't seen a check from them, so we're not sure. I think it was $80,000 or something in that realm. But in my mind, that's been frankly, the best that I've seen so far.
Good.
Because it's money in earnest and it should be more than enough unless you run into some real issues. But it really does, I think, commit the developer and allows you to frankly engage your professional team in a comfortable manner to say, be thorough and do everything that's necessary. So Steve, I have to give these guys all the credit in the world. I think that 1% of the estimated cost of the project for an application fee is wonderful.
So is that separate from like a building permit fee then? Does the town also charge?
Well, that's actually specific to the solar
Okay,
project.
okay.
Yeah. So, and again, as Steve was saying, you know, a lot of times you start out with smaller escrow amounts, and you have to keep going back, and that delays the process. But I'll give you guys credit. I think that 1% is wonderful. I think that was a smart move. This is the only one that I've seen so far that's fashioned like this. I think it's the best.
And then the only other thing during the process, and this is up to the planning board, but if there comes a point where there's some really technical issues or matters that need to be discussed, sometimes it's easier and more efficient if B&L corresponds directly with the solar developer's consultant or engineer, you know, just to iron out certain really technical issues. But again, that's something that the planning board can decide if you feel comfortable or not doing that. But I just wanted to mention that.
Sure.
That seemed to be what you were saying before. I forget exactly what you were referring to, but it looked like you were going back and forth between the developer and yourselves.
And that happens a fair amount.
Yeah.
Once we get into the technical details of it. But again, everything that we do with them, we will copy in a minimum, you know, the group.
So when we're talking about something technical, now this Mead Road project is on a hill. What, is that going to require, you just mentioned storm runoff before, what, is there going to be I don't even know what I'm asking. But
No, I think what you're saying is because of the slope,
yes.
does it present some additional runoff issues when it comes to stormwater issues, et cetera? I can't remember in this particular project in the review, we've done so many of these lately, but that is a consideration that our engineers do look at closely.
So you raise a good point, and I'll just throw this out there so you'll be aware. You know, if more than 1 acre of land is going to be disturbed during the construction of the project, then they have to do a stormwater pollution prevention plan, okay, which is a rather large document that includes a lot of calculations. What happens on these solar projects is that the solar developer will say, well, I'm not going to disturb the land within the fenced area where the solar panels are going to go, because all I'm going to do is drive the posts into the ground, and the posts don't disturb the soil. So therefore, the only disturbance I'm going to do is by installing the access road, you know, or putting in, you know, if they have some equipment pads. So sometimes we get into a little bit of a battle with them regarding whether or not they're disturbing less than 1 acre or more than 1 acre. So, but we do look at that carefully. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, the solar developer ends up agreeing to do a stormwater pollution prevention plan.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I guess I don't want to, carry this on too much more, this stormwater abatement deal, but I'm sure you have all the figures on slope of the land and water runoffs, and you have all those figures. Does that apply? Is that just a blanket application, or does each soil condition require another take at?
John, actually, good point you brought up. I think if we go through these points in this review, it might help you understand. And here's what we're requiring. The Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, are commonly referred to as a SWIP, SWPPEP, SWIP. The SWIP should include a summary of hydrological analysis of pre-development and post-development peak flow conditions and indicate locations/details of stormwater practices required to maintain sheet flow and limit post-development peak flows. So really what that's telling is we require the developer to give us all those calculations. We review them to make sure that they're
Is that in
effective
here,
and compliant.
your SWIP?
It's on page 6.
Okay,
Uh,
I see it.
Number 2, please provide evidence that the
Yeah,
proposed
yeah.
pervious access drive is acceptable to the New York State DEC as
Yeah.
pervious cover. Detail 1 on sheet C530 appears to be a traditional impervious gravel access drive. If warranted impervious, the SWIP must address ongoing maintenance for these post-construction stormwater management practices, which relates directly to the slope and the conditions with that road. This description of construction means and methods to prevent disturbance during construction of the piles and the security fences required within the SWIP to verify that the installation of these elements within the wetland will not be considered a regulatory activity. Per the 2016 memorandum on federal regulation of solar arrays and wetlands from the U.S. Corps of Engineers, Army Corps of Engineers, although installation of piles driven into wetlands without grubbing of soil is not considered a regulated activity, mowing of vegetation within the wetland area is considered to be a regulated activity. The plan should clearly delineate the limits of proposed vegetative cover and maintenance limits for mowing. Very detailed that the developer is expected to include information in the SWIP describing existing and proposed cover types, as well as maintenance of the proposed vegetative cover. Seed mixes and application rates should be indicated within the notes on the plan, which I hope John kind of addressed. Good questions you ask, a good point, kind of addresses all of those concerns in detail, very technically, to say, provide us all the detail, all the information, the hydrologic analysis, et cetera. And then we'll review it, our engineers will review it.
And if they're gonna be disturbing more than an acre and they have to do SWIP, and if, is the town considered an MS4 municipality? Do you know what that
I
means?
don't think so, Steve.
Okay.
I can almost,
So then the DEC, they're gonna have to get they're gonna have to submit to the DEC when it comes time prior to construction to do what's called a notice of intent. And the DEC staff, let's, say in the Watertown office, they may actually review the stormwater pollution plan in addition to, Barton and LaJudas. So it's pretty important. I mean, basically what we're requiring is that there can be no more water leaving the site now than there is once the solar facility is up and constructed and you have access roads and other potential, other impervious services. So we pay careful attention to that because, and that's why B&L would do periodic site inspections of the site. If you were to hire us to do that once it's constructed, to make sure that there's not excessive erosion occurring, either on site or off site.
So what you just said, does that require then some sort of a test prior to the project being instigated in terms of construction? You'd have to know what the runoff was.
Well, so two answers to your question. One is some soil developers will actually go and do what's called a geotechnical investigation, where they're more evaluating the stability of the soils, so they can determine, what type of posts to use. But also, it can be possible that a percolation test would have to be done. If you're familiar with, like, say, a home
Right.
home septic system.
Mhm.
Where they actually have to go out and, dig a trench and fill it up with water and see how long it takes for the water to percolate down. That would especially be true if they're gonna have detention basins on site to control the runoff. So to answer your question, yes.
Well, this project is on a hill. I mean, this is the one that's on a hill. The next one on Route 11 is not on a hill. So,
But the water that hits there now runs off somewhere, so
Yep.
it just can't have more than it's rush now.
that's right.
Great.
It's
And those
generally
are
not,
all-
it's generally not common for solar facilities to be built on slopes greater than 15%.
Right.
Because then they're losing the effectiveness of the panels and trying to capture the sun. Plus it's difficult for them to construct. So you don't usually see too many built on hills.
So on the Mead Road then, Deb, we expect a response from them, you're saying, the first week in October?
That's what I requested.
Okay. And then once we get that response, we'll get on it
Yeah.
and we will compare it with our first letter to them,
Yeah.
our review letter.
Yeah.
All right, and then we'll
go from there.
go from there.
I have a couple questions on your page 7. I don't know what some of your abbreviations are. What is NOI?
Notice of intent.
And with SHPO,
Oh, that's Historic Preservation Office. And it's always, it's, SHPO, we have all these. State Office of Historic Preservation, yeah, so SHPO,
I think that was,
okay.
so I'm feeling overwhelmed. I don't know about all you.
I just have a quick question. Do you also address some of the concerns? I know the Roses, there have been some interesting pushbacks that they have brought to fore. I don't remember all of them or whatever, but are you also involved in helping us kind of wade through? I mean, one of the things with the hill had to do with the height of the arrays, and therefore it no longer, the vegetation that they were going to plant no longer covered that, and there were a number of things that they had pointed out.
So it's important to address and review and address all of those comments.
Right.
And certainly,
To
that's
take
what we're here
it
for,
seriously and at least,
very serious.
yeah, because otherwise, I mean, they're the neighbors, they're the people most affected. And,
Yes,
there's an obligation that I believe that we have to them as well as to
oh, absolutely,
everything. So, okay.
absolutely.
But I also agree that this goes with the land, and we have to look at the land and not, because neighbors are not going to be happy regardless of what neighbor it is with any solar array that's going to border their property. So we're not going to make them happy.
Not necessarily. Well, I'm not sure that that's, I think there's mitigation that we can do or address.
I think we can make it the best that we can make it.
Yeah. that was-
According to our policy and the law. But we're not here to make everyone happy. We're just,
You're here to
We're
listen
here
to their
to follow.
concerns and
Yes,
do your
we're here
best to
to
address
follow.
them
yes,
in accordance with
Right.
your
with our policy,
codes and policy.
yes, and the law.
And we'll certainly help you analyze those.
And I don't think the Roses will ever be happy with a solar project that borders their property.
Mhm.
And I don't think that this board can make them happy, nor do I think we should. Nor do I think we should even have to do that, it's not our responsibility. Anyway, so just to recap this Mead project. If they do as we asked, and they have revised their proposal to include all the recommendations from BNL, and we get it back in a timely manner, we will then send it to BNL for a review and comparison. Did they do everything that they were asked to do? And if not, then it needs to go back to the developers to say, oh, well, we need this, this, and this.
Yes.
if we get all that information as requested, then we'll have a meeting, a planning board meeting. We'll do the seeker. We'll start with the seeker.
Start the process.
We'll start the process with the seeker. If we have a positive declaration, or if we want a negative declaration, right? That it doesn't cause any adverse effects, then we would have a public hearing, and then it would come back here for our final approval of the project.
Essentially.
Is that exact kind of how it goes?
That's basically how we'll go. When you start the secret process, you do the coordinated review. The coordinated review takes 30 days.
And what is the coordinated review?
Coordinated review is when you send the part one, which is the description of the project,
Mhm,
part one of the EAF.
mhm.
You send that to all the involved and interested agencies, along with your
Who are the
resolution.
interested agencies? Because I don't know who they are.
Yeah, for instance, we read off the list.
Oh, the egg and market.
Yes.
All the
So for instance, for the Mead Road, the involved and interested agents would be New York State Energy Research Development Authority, NYSERDA, New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, New York State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO. Army Corps of Engineers is an interested agency because they're a federal agency and they can't make they don't approve or deny anything other than wetland. St. Lawrence County Soil and Water Conservation, St. Lawrence County Farm Bureau, and the Town of Canton Fire Department.
Did you develop that list? Where did that list?
This is our list right,
You.
The B&L
the
development.
B&L
Yeah, that, okay.
developed,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
which is in addition to what the developer initially identified.
Okay.
All right, what we want to make sure is all
Like
these,
not the ag protection board.
Yeah,
Not
that-
the ag protection board.
yeah, I'm not sure exactly what they did, but.
Egg and markets on there.
And the reason-
That's not.
sometimes we'll include, we didn't on that one, but sometimes we'll include the school district. But for instance, the reason why we include the fire department is because.
I was just gonna mention that, Steve.
What?
I was just gonna mention that. Go ahead. Yeah, you're right.
The reason why we include the fire department is because we feel it's very important for the fire chief or someone from the fire department to review the plans for the site access road. Because the site access road has to be wide enough and it has to be structurally constructed such that it could accommodate an emergency vehicle to get back to where the solar panels are if there was ever a fire.
Right.
So that's our mechanism for getting the fire department involved in the review.
Right.
So when you say start this coordinated review, what does that mean from the responsibility of?
So the
this board?
responsibility of the planning board, your first action will be a resolution to declare your intent to seek lead agency. And we'll help you with that resolution along with the bill. We generally will draft up that resolution, do them all the time.
You
That's the
said
first
intent to seek lead agency.
So we did that at our last
Yes.
meeting.
Yeah.
We did a declaration of intent.
Oh, you know why? Because I set that up.
Yes.
I did, we did, that's right.
Yeah, we already did that.
Right.
didn't
You
we?
did that.
Do we have to do it again?
No.
All right, so that's
So
done.
you have the resolution, so,
Yes, we did.
That's for the meat run.
Yeah.
yeah, that's right.
for the-
I'd forgotten about that, 'cause that one was done. Well, I think the coordinated review still needs to be done because we have not gotten back the revised part one from the
Right.
development.
So when you say coordinated review, what are you saying from our responsibilities? After we get the part one and it's fully done, what do we need to do other than do part two and part three?
So we'll draft the letter up, which goes on town letterhead, okay? It is then sent to each of these agencies along with the part one, okay? And a copy of the resolution. So you've already done your intent to seek lead agency resolution,
We
so you
did.
have that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll need a signed copy of that.
Jenny's got that.
Right. And then once we get the FEA part one, and we and the board are satisfied that it's complete and accurate.
Yeah.
Then we'll prepare the letter to send out to the
Yeah.
involved agencies. Okay, goes on town.
And the we is you.
What's that?
And the we is here. You send these out?
We do it, sometimes
The town will send them out.
So, okay.
we can send them out.
Alright.
That's not a problem. So that gets sent out and then you wait 30 days.
Okay.
The involved agencies have the right within that 30 days, they can either write back and say, no, that's no problem. We're comfortable with the town planning board and Canton being the lead agency. Or there's a process, if they want to be the lead agency, they can then state that, and then there's a process to go through. Very, very
I'm
rarely
a little
does any,
confused.
Oh, no, that's.
I know,
Because-
very rarely does anybody ever
Yeah.
object to a town planning board, in this case, because it's your project, being lead agency.
All right,
You'll
so the
never-
letters you're talking about is about us being lead agency,
Yes.
and you can send that out now,
Yeah.
because that's been signed for a month.
But
But part one of the.
you can't send it out till we have the
Part one.
part
Oh,
one.
until you have part one.
Because that's gotta go out with the letter.
I got it.
Because really, basically, what you're doing with the letter is you're introducing the project to these involved and interested agencies. And that part one is a accurate description of exactly what the project
I got it.
is, right?
Mhm.
So you're sending it out saying, hey, we've passed a resolution, we intend to be lead agency. If you object to that, let us know. You have 30 days. If we don't hear from you within 30 days,
We assume.
we're assuming that, right, yep. We're gonna assume that they're fine with it.
Okay,
Most of these agents, a lot of these agencies, involved agencies they routinely send a short letter out that says, yep, we got it. Thank you for, sending us information on the project. We have no objection to being lead agency.
okay.
But, yeah. Yeah, I was just gonna say, John, that letter that they send back sometimes though will provide their recommendations or their requirements or permits.
Every once in a while, yes, you're right. They may have comments that say, keep in mind this, and that. When you're.
The other thing I would include is what I like to do is include just like a site plan drawing, or at
That's
least
got-
something
yeah.
that shows, where the project.
That goes with part one, yep. Right at the end. Yep, you're right.
So 30 days begins exactly when?
When the letters go out,
When the
Date
letter
that they go out or-
to
the date that they go out.
to the agencies involved.
Yeah. So if this were a typical situation and we had they had responded with a complete FEAF part one, at your last meeting, you would have had the resolution, your intent. Okay, if we'd have had the part one and said, okay, that's complete now, then shortly after that, a day or two after that, we would have the letters prepared and send out, do the coordinated review, so that at your next meeting, typically, in the next month, you could then declare yourself lead agency, and then review part 2 and 3. Typically, you want some time to, again, as Steve said, go over in detail the part 2 and 3.
So it sounds like at our next meeting that the board would have, if we get an acceptable part one, we would review it to make sure it's complete.
Correct.
The board would. If it's complete with B&L's review and our review, then we can send it out with that intent, with the site plan. Then in November, we do part 2 and part 3.
You could.
Is
if-
that correct?
Yeah.
If all the information is
Correct.
then submitted to support all the environmental review,
Okay,
visual analysis, the noise analysis, the
all of
wetland
it.
delineation. So, and if they're responsive and all that's available for the board's review,
Mhm.
then you could possibly do it then.
okay.
But this is not going to start until the right of way gets figured out.
That's correct.
So we don't coordinate a review, even this letter from the developer. None of that can happen until this right of way.
And again, that's something that Bill is gonna have to confirm. That legally, that easement has been obtained. And again, documentation. That's Bill's department to make sure you're right. That in fact, that's step one. You can then accept their preliminary application, for review.
Okay,
And to be clear, we aren't there yet.
Yeah, right.
Once we then do parts 2 and 3, Does that mean now we now have a completed application?
No, it just means seeker's complete.
Seeker's complete, okay.
Yep.
Keep going.
Good
All right,
point.
so,
That just means you can make your determination of significance. Which,
It's another word for us.
yep, it generally is, your negative declaration that there's no significant environmental impact. After you review all that, okay? And that just means you've got the seeker process done.
Then we have a public hearing.
You do a public hearing. You're likely going to get comments, and I guess in Meadrow, from what I've heard and seen so far, probably going to have some more comments.
Right.
And you have to address those
Right.
in the best way possible.
And then we can go on with,
And then at that point,
we can look
You
at the
can then-
completed application and accept it or reject it.
determine whether you want to accept and when you do that, Steve and his team do a great job putting the final resolution together with all the necessary stipulations. Steve mentioned stipulations like requiring that they have an
Yeah.
escrow account for future maintenance
Yeah.
and,
All of that.
inspection, all of that, very detailed. So that in the end, as you make that resolution, these are all the stipulations they have to comply with,
Okay.
okay?
All right. Maybe.
So we'll,
when does the 62 days start?
when you deem the application
Complete.
complete, which means
All of this
everything has
is
been
done.
submitted to your satisfaction.
The final resolution? And with the final resolution?
No, with all of these 8 pages of recommendations, all have to be in
All
there. And the secret, all that 2 pages of letter need to be
Sure.
completed.
So you've got all the information, you're comfortable that everything has been submitted. And between Bill from a legal standpoint and B&L from a technical standpoint, we say everything is there. In enough sufficiency so that you can make a final, decision.
Okay,
These are fun.
yeah.
I'd just like to add one thing. It's not always possible to do parts 2 and 3 in the same meeting. And the reason why I say that is because part 3, I don't know if you've ever had to do a part 3 form before, but part 3 is basically a narrative of all of the potential impacts that the project might have, and you have to describe, particularly if an impact is considered to be moderate, you have to describe why the planning board decided that moderate impact did not warrant a positive declaration. So you'd have to say, for instance, well, there were potential visual impacts, but the solar developer has agreed to provide landscape screening along so-and-so roadway. So what I'm getting at is that for B&L to have prepared the part 3 narrative before you go through the part 2, I mean, we can take our best shot at doing that, but we don't, quite honestly, we don't know, we can't predict how you're going to react or you're going to interpret certain parts of the part 2, if that makes sense.
Right.
So, I just want to throw that out there, that's all.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I'm overloaded.
So that's me, Road.
But we have, yes, it's overloaded, but we have a process.
Yes,
We
there's-
have a step by step by
Yeah.
step by step.
We know a lot
process.
better.
So
a lot
that
more
I feel
now.
more comfortable with it, not that I know how to do it, but I know I'm getting a sense of the process.
Sure.
And when in doubt, ask them. That part I like.
So I guess,
Trying to get some done.
Okay.
so maybe quickly on the Route 11 solar project.
Yeah.
Deb, I think I forwarded to you sort of a corrected, edited copy.
Yes.
Your name now is chairperson.
Yeah.
That is as far as this review has progressed. We would now ask for you and your board to review it and provide any comments or questions that you may
Okay.
have with that. So that once we receive that, if we need to change it or edit it or add to it, we can. And then with your permission, we would forward that to the developer and await their response.
Um,
So that one hasn't advanced any further than that. In fact, I guess I'm a little surprised you haven't already heard from them saying what's
Well-
going on.
And part of that may be because we no longer have a code enforcement officer, because
Okay,
all of these projects need to go through the town and not through the planning chair. Because
right,
there was issues with it, some going to the code enforcement officers and some going to the planning board chair. And there was a lack of communication internally, and I don't want that to happen again.
okay,
So I'm gonna talk to Mary Ann when we're done. I really think that someone from the town needs to be the lead person
sure,
to get these communications and then distribute it to the
Sure.
voluntary board members.
sure.
So that's what I'm gonna look
And
at.
I know through this year early on, Bob Washoe has tried to act somewhat like
Yes.
that. So that he's kind of been our interface.
Yeah. And maybe
From that
she'll have
standpoint.
Bob do it
yeah, I don't
again.
know.
I'm not
Well,
sure.
that's a good point. That's an excellent.
But I really want someone, a paid member of the town to be the contact person
Okay,
and direct it all out.
so that's where that one sits. And you have copies of that? Does anybody need a copy of our review letter? I
What,
brought
you got
extra.
hard copies?
I do.
Pass them out.
So you have reviewed their application. That's what you're saying.
Your initial application we have. As a matter of fact, I brought copies
And this is,
just in case.
this is what it is. Oh, boy.
Wait, that's-
So we can't do any business today because
No.
this is just an
I'll just let
educational
you pass
session.
those down.
It's not a public. Hasn't been announced publicly. Bill, it goes in your book, Bill Myers.
So, yeah,
Oh, sorry. Is that Bill?
Thank you.
Yes. I don't know if I-
Are there any other non-solar issues that are going to be discussed tonight?
No other solar issues. We were just getting an updates just for educational, organizational purposes.
Before you go, Eric, I just have a general question. We went through all of this painstakingly, all of these steps on these smaller projects, but we also have this big project coming our way. And we don't have anything to do with that. Is that true?
so that was sort of the next update.
Oh, okay.
And frankly, I'm gonna turn that over to both Steve and Bill, because you're right, and Bill has had some communication with the attorney from the other side on that larger project, that 240
Right.
megawatt project. And that's under the 94C process, which you're right, which is a completely different process.
Exactly.
And it's not that you don't necessarily have any input in that, you do.
Right.
And there are some funding involved. In fact, Bill is an initial escrow agreement draft that they've sent, the developer has sent to cover some initial costs
Right.
potentially. So Bill and Steve, I'm gonna turn that one over to you guys. And Bill, I know you've had some initial interface with their attorney.
Well, before you jump in, I'm going to sign off, everyone, unless I'm needed
Okay,
for something.
thank you,
else.
Eric.
Thank you so
Eric.
much.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I took two.
Got enough?
As long as there's an
What I do?
electronic version in the Google Drive, everything's fine.
All right, so here's where we are at the moment with the large project. They've planned to take this through the 94C process, which is a state-run process. They've done an open house that I'm aware of.
Yep.
They've published some documentation about their current lease holdings, which I believe is about 1,100 acres of land that they've put under lease. And they're now starting to work through the process, which according to their information, it should be 2 to 3 years before that process is completed with the state. In the meantime, there will be some activity, studies that have to be done. A lot of the things that have been mentioned so far, bird studies, wetland delineations, all of those very specific things that need to be done are all mandated by that 94C process. So all of those things will happen and will be ongoing for a period of years. So before we get to the actual point where they apply, there will be some time put in by BNL, by myself, to address the issues that come along. And there's a fairly short list of those issues that they've already identified as requiring some input for us. So in order to accommodate the town's need for professional assistance, they've proposed an escrow. They would like to put into an escrow account with the town a figure of $20,000 to cover those interim expenses. So that was actually proposed today. We're reviewing it. My understanding is that if we get to the end of that initial deposit, and there is still work to be done, still funding that is required, that they would respond to that request as well. Ultimately, there is a fee that is generated for the benefit of the IDA, the county, and the town, and the school district, which is based on the size of the project. That's a $240,000 fund that'll be created and divided among the municipal partners that are responsible for the project. So that one is years away, frankly. The reason why it's here, they've made very clear, is the new transmission line that's being constructed that they want to interconnect with. Their timeline can be accelerated by an award from NYSERDA that would make them essentially a priority project in the state. And they've applied for that, and they're hoping to see a result from that. So right now, my recommendation is that we accept their offer of an initial deposit. Whether or not the amount that they've proposed is adequate is, quite frankly, a topic for discussion. Steve, do you have any reflections on that issue?
No, I mean, the same law firm, Young Summer, they proposed an escrow agreement to 3 towns, the towns of Homer, Solon, and Portlandville. And those towns accepted the escrow agreement. And what it did is it allowed myself to attend a meeting that the developer had and their attorneys with the towns to review the project. The other thing the money can be used for is Bill, they're going to be sending a letter to the town where they review all of the town laws that pertain to the siting of the solar facility. And they're going to indicate in this letter whether or not they can meet those laws. And if they can't, why not? And obviously you can, respond to that letter. They're also going to want the town to participate in the selection of viewpoints for their, what they call their visual impact assessment. So they're going to want, and BNL can help you decide those. So, I mean, I think the $20,000 potentially should be adequate, but who knows, if there's a lot of meetings or a lot of interaction, then it might not, but, they don't have to do that, just so it's clear. So it's nice that they're doing that, providing that funding.
My recommendation is that we go ahead with the escrow agreement, and we start to work on the project as it progresses, which, as far as the planning board is concerned, it'll be a long time before that matter arrives at your desk, if ever, depending on how the determination goes as to whether or not our local law is substantive in nature and what elements of it are. And there's a there's a set of arguments that we will have over that. But basically, that project is not something we're probably going to spend any time on over the next year and a half to perhaps 2 years, depending on NYSERDA. So it is, it's a topic of interest, something that I think we should follow. But I think in terms of decision-making by the board, process by the board, I don't see that happening for quite some time, and perhaps not at all.
Right.
When you say not at all, what do you mean by that?
Well, the state passed a law that included solar and wind into the major power plant siting process. So if you're going to build a major power plant, 25 megawatts or above, the review is done by a new board that was created and regulations have been drafted. The Office of Renewable Energy Siting. And that process will go on at a state level. It is intended to essentially streamline the siting process. For all intents and purposes, they're trying to create a parallel system for projects of this type so that they don't go through a local process. That is the intent, that your input is through a representative, a single representative.
Right. So basically, it supersedes the secret review process. But having said that, they really almost end up doing what I would call an environmental impact statement for the project, because they have to do a detailed review of anything that the planning board would likely require them to do a review of. And when the town applies for what's called local agency funding, then that money can be used by the town to have B&L do a technical review of all of the issues and noise and visual and et cetera, and have Bill involved from looking at things from a legal standpoint. So, and that's a lot of money that they have to put up. So.
We will have input, but we won't have decision-making power.
Right.
That's basically that, the bigger project. I think that covers everything so far.
And then I guess I just like to make like a global comment, just something to you to keep in mind. And John and I have experienced this with other planning boards, but you're starting to review your first few solar projects, and you may decide that there's that your solar law could be revised, perhaps. Maybe there's certain provisions that aren't included that you want to include, or maybe you want to make it, more thorough. And I guess, so what some planning boards have done is they've gone ahead and either done that or they've, passed a moratorium to do it. So, but I would just be aware that other planning boards have, they created their solar laws several years ago, but they've never had to really apply them. And now all of a sudden they have to apply the solar laws, and you might find out that there's, holes in it, I guess to say,
Right.
I think your solar law is actually, it's one of the more recent ones.
Right, we just did it,
Yeah, so I
and we
think,
used the state's
yes,
template.
I know you did.
Yeah.
I've actually used yours as an example for a couple other
Yay.
communities that
Yeah.
we're working with, but yeah. But again, as Steve points out, we may find going through the process that there's a hole or two in it that can always be revised.
Sure.
Can help you with that too. So I guess that's our story tonight.
That was very interesting.
Does anyone have any questions? Comments? Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
You're very welcome.
Terrific.
Thank you so much.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
informative.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you now.
All right, so
Conclude.
you got this. We have a card at the same time.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
I sort of feel like I know what's going on now.
You do? Good. That was the intent
Anybody else wants a card?
today.
Thank you.
All right, so we're all set then?
Yes.
I think so. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thanks a lot for being there.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Good night.
you.
Thank you.
I'll take one as well.
What's that?
So Bill,
I am, yes.
Are you all
Native of
set?
Watertown. Started the Watertown office in 2000.
Bill Myers.
Well,
Yes, I wasn't sure if you were talking to me.
for
I'm all set.
15 years.
And I
now.
will, I'll call the clerk's
Kind of
office
my
so that I can come in and pick up.
career.
All right.
Okay.
Will you be our
Love these people.
full-fledged member then instead of an alternate?
Yay.
Yeah, that's the next question, Bill.
Uh, Oh, you're asking me at a terrible time, but yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Wonderful. All right, so can we all meet October the 19th at 7:00? That's the third Tuesday. Does that work?
October 19th.
17th, I think it is.
Is it the 17th?
I don't know.
No, the 17th is a Sunday.
Oh, 19th.
The
you're right.
19th, you're correct.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
look
just
at that,
checking the
already have you
date.
on
I don't have anything that evening, so I will.
You good with that? Does 7:00 work?
7:00 is our
Can
time.
we make it a standing meeting? Third
Every third
Tuesday of the month
Tuesday?
at 7?
Third Tuesday.
Tuesday of the month at 7.
I do Zonta.
You have something the third Wednesday? Does that work for you, Bill Myers?
First year.
The
October-
third Tuesday.
The third Tuesday of the month?
Yes, I was just putting it in my calendar. I think it does. I know the 19th works. I haven't looked beyond that.
Okay, we can always look at November and October. Okay,
No, sounds good. Thank you.
awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
It's a box.
Oh, it looks like a book of
It
spells.
does. I know. It's just a box for,
John, before you
It
go,
is an
Time to
absolute
open it
one.
up.
oh, absolutely. Go for
Say-
it.
We got
if ever.
Bye, Bill.
You said if
Bye,
ever,
Bill.
Bye,
the
Bill.
project
We're seeing you.
gets reviewed forward, if ever, you use that word, I think you said if ever. And then I asked him to explain what that meant, but I didn't get a good explanation. Could you,
Well-
before you go,